Hi everyone, I'm Isha Shah, a South Asian photographer from London specialising in live music. And today I'm going to show you how to photograph a live gig from the pre-production to the post-production. How I really got started is actually kind of funny. I saw a tweet and somebody tweeted you can study music journalism. At this point, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I love taking photos on my digital camera at gigs. So I went to university in Southampton, studied journalism. Obviously with that, you have a lot of photography. So I really enjoyed being like behind the camera. I couldn't afford one, so I had to rent it out from my university for the 3 years that I was there until my family bought me one. And the way that I got to shoot shows for free was I used the uni's magazine to apply for press, and then they would, in exchange of a ticket, just give me a photo pass, and then I would photograph the show, sometimes review it. So I was using my degree, but also my passion at the same time. Some of the first bands I started like photographing were very emo, very rock. I kind of grew up in that environment. It's kind of ironic now because I photographed Enter Shikari back in the day, like maybe 2015. And you know, I'm here now working with them. So a lot of these jobs are kind of full circle moments. So depending on what you're doing and what your job is, there's different ways to prepare. So the last few days I was shooting for publication, which is slightly different than working with a band. When you are doing it via press, you only get the first 3 songs and you're not allowed to stay to watch the show. So normally what I do is pack gear that suits the venue. So shooting at the O2 last night with Lizzo was insane. We had to shoot from front of house. So what I would do is charge all my camera batteries, put all my SD cards into my case, double check and pack my bag the night before. The morning of, I'll get all the charged camera batteries, put them in my little pouch, put them in the cameras and pack my bag. Because it's the O2 and because it's front of house, I know now that I have to rent an extender because my 200 isn't enough. I need it to be at least 400. So then I'll go on Fat Llama, rent something out if I don't have the piece of equipment just for the night and get it expensed by the publication. You normally arrive at least half an hour before the artist goes on stage. The reason for this is because you have to get your press pass, there might be a queue. You also want to like get your camera on and set everything up, clean your lenses, be ready, check your batteries, all of that. So make sure that you are at least half an hour early before. When you're working with a band, it's slightly different. You do have to be at the venue a lot earlier than half an hour before their set time. Normally you get called to be at the venue around sound check, which is from 1 p.m. to 5 p.m. So you do have to have an early start to the day, maybe charge your camera batteries 2 days before, pack your bag the day before, not the morning of, and be well and active for a full day of shooting. Because you're not just shooting the live gig, you're shooting behind the scenes, sound check, any like candid moments, the walk on, the walk off. You also need to make sure you have enough batteries, enough SD cards, and also enough energy. So make sure you do get your breakfast, lunch, and dinner in. When you're on tour, it is a bit more different because now you have to pack clothes, you have to pack practical things, comfortable wear, comfortable shoes. And it kind of does make sense wearing all black because your whole wardrobe is just going to be black and it's great. But I will say pack light on tour. Normally with Shikari, we get crew shirts, which is great because you can just rotate through that during the working hours. And then during the day, you can kind of wear what you want. So what's in my bag? I think you're going to be asking this question. A lot of things. So I want to start off with my 360 camera. I love this piece of equipment because it captures not only behind the scenes of myself shooting that I can use for my Instagram reels, but also the band. We've had a lot of fun with this camera. My trusty pot of filters. So this is from Gobe, a really cool company that has star filters, it has pro mist filters, so I can use any one that I want for any kind of style. My little travel size case of goodie. So in here, I literally have batteries, I have prisms, I have my earplugs, I have SD cards, I have lens cleaner. It's just anything that is a camera accessory that I need on the go. And then again, I have this, which, yeah, you're going to be shocked. There's a lot of SD cards that are falling out right now. But yeah, a little case for your SD cards because we've got to keep them safe. In terms of actual camera equipment, I shoot on 2 cameras. Bit controversial. Sony a7 III. It's really good for video. I love it for that, but also for photos as well. The shutter is just amazing. paired with the Samyang 8mm. It's all manual, which I love as well and really easy to use. And then we've got to have a prime lens because you know for them dark, intimate moments. So I've got a 35mm Sigma 1.4 and it is absolutely gorgeous. And then for my main body, I am Team Canon. I do need to upgrade, but we are working with a Canon 5D Mark IV and then paired with a 24 to 70 2.8 lens. This is all I really need for a show like Shikari because you have your wide, you have your, 8mm, you have your 35 prime, and then you have your 70 for the close-up shots from the back. So in terms of like camera equipment, that's not really camera equipment. I always wear this really cool harness because when you have two camera bodies, it's really hard to shoot and just swinging them about. So one attaches on here and the other attaches on here. They are secure with these little hooks. So if any of them fall off, you've still got this. And it's so easy to maneuver the venue. Kind of feel like a RoboCop like this. So in terms of like why I use a Canon, I think I just love the color profiles that it gives you organically. Some of you will just shoot and be happy with that. Obviously, I love to edit my colors, but I also think with the 5D Mark IV, the touchscreen, for me is amazing. I am one of them photographers who do not use the viewfinder, please don't at me. So looking at the screen and continuously tapping for the focus, yes, I'm also autofocus, really is helpful. I find the interface just really easy to navigate and you can see everything. Like up here, there's a monitor saying your battery, how many shots you have left on the SD card, and it's bulk enough that you can hold it and not get your hand hurt. So in terms of lenses, I think every photographer needs a 24 to 70 2.8. The reason for this is when you're shooting a gig, everything's happening fast and you don't have time to swap lenses. So this gives you the range of getting a pretty much wide shot and then a really close-up shot. I love using this when I'm at front of house or in a balcony and you can get the whole atmosphere in the shot, but then you can zoom in and just pinpoint one member. This works really well in smaller venues. If you are shooting a bigger venue, I'd recommend the 70 to 200 2.8 as well. My Samyang 8mm 2.8 is a brand new lens and I only bought it 3 weeks ago for this tour. I think when you're shooting rock bands and there's so many people on the stage and also the crowd, you want to get all of that encapsulated. This lens is all manual, so you can change the aperture, you can change the focus. But what's so great about it is you technically just have to leave it on infinity and then everything's in focus if you're a couple of feet away. So I really recommend this lens for anyone who is in the rock kind of industry, festivals. It is so great. It kind of gives you that Tony Hawk skateboarding vibes. So I started off on a Canon 550D. I'm sure everybody had that one with the little 50mm 1.8 lens that you could chuck about and it will still not be broken. And then I progressed to a 70D, still Canon. And then from that, I finally was able enough to earn enough money to buy myself the Canon 5D Mark IV. And I've been using this camera for a long time. I have used the Canon R5 and I will say that is my next purchase. The only difference is the file sizes are enormous. It is insane, but the quality, the autofocusing, the tracking, the video, the 4K at 120 frames is exceptional. So I do think that while this gear is amazing and I love it, I do want to upgrade since I've had this camera for over 4 years. So the way that I use my kit is, it really kind of goes hand in hand with my harness. I love to have two bodies that I can quickly whip out and shoot with. I'm a very quick shooter, so I'm always looking, sometimes not looking at the viewfinder or the camera, and I will know when a moment is there to capture. I'm very much somebody who's like, believes in the process of just taking loads of photos. I have limited myself from taking 2,000. These days I tend to shoot around 800, and I think the Canon is really important in enabling me to do that. The touchscreen shutter is amazing, and I love the fact that you can shoot live mode because my eyesight isn't the greatest and I don't like putting a camera up to my face because I feel like I'm missing on the other shots happening. So let's talk about camera settings. We all know that prime lenses are great because they have a low aperture, such as 1.2, 1.4, but when the music and the lighting is changing so rapidly, I found sticking to 2.8 being the best aperture range. So with your shutter speed, the lowest I would ever go is 1/200. The reason for this is because when there's movement, you want to make sure you're capturing it and there's not a blur. Saying that, I do love a low shutter speed. And to get some really artistic shots, literally putting it down to 5 or 0/3 would be amazing too. When it comes to ISO, this does depend on your camera. Some handle it better than others. With the Canon, I tend to stick to 1600 to 2500. I found that to be the best range, but again, it just depends on what moments are happening, if the stage is lit up or if it's really dark. Settings do depend on what I want to do. Normally when I'm shooting artists, I want to be creative. So I always switch to doing low shutter shots and shaking my camera about to get some really cool effects. This depends on the artist, like I've kind of explained before with their style. I normally stick to the same settings just because I know what works, and in my head, I'm continuously changing it according to the lighting. So it's really fun as a freelancer. I work with all different artists, from rap to rock to country to pop to literally anyone you can name. And I feel like diversifying your style to suit the client is important. So what I tend to do is normally have a chat. What do you guys want? I want to put my input on it because I don't just want to be a camera operator. I want to be someone you're hiring because you like my work. Like, for example, sometimes rappers don't want shots of these cool, dreamy prisms, but then you find artists like who are soulful and soothing, and you find that this actually elevates their sound. So I think a lot about style is actually understanding their brand, because every artist has one, and unfortunately, as photographers, we do have to adhere to that, but we can also put our stance in it. So I'm shooting Shikari tonight, and I think it's amazing because they're one of the bands when I first started shooting, I would use a lot of prisms and a lot of experimentation. Their music, you can't put it in a genre. There's just so much happening. And to me, that's literally my personality. Like, I just love using different things to edit with. So normally when I shoot their gigs, I definitely use a wide angle lens because there's so much happening and there's so much movement that you want to capture it. Their production is insane. So you want to make sure you get all the lights, all the lasers, all the hands, all the crowds, the mosh pits, everything. What I normally do is I edit them really quickly, select the images that I like. Normally they're wide shots, like using an 8mm lens. And then sometimes I do like the detailed close-ups. I think having these combinations of the wides and the close-ups make for great photography and range. Sometimes I kind of go back on my work and I'll be like, okay, how can we elevate this? And I'll go into Photoshop and layer up photos. One of my favorite photos to date is a photo that I layered from the crowd and the band. And this photo I literally edited within 5 minutes because I was just bored and I was like, let me do something fun. And I'm not kidding you, like, it is one of my favorite photos I've ever taken in the 7 years that I've been doing this. So when it comes to music, everybody knows first 3 songs, no flash. So I don't like using flash. I've kind of been conditioned not to, but when I am working with a band on tour and we are doing behind the scenes or we're doing like promotional pictures in the dressing rooms, I will have my flash gun. I do like using it at sound check because I'm a big fan of slow shutter movement, and kind of waving your camera around and getting some light trails is really fun. It's a really creative way to portray photos and it's coming back in trend. So I do use the flash here and there. I know with Shikari, Rao loves to get into the crowd. He doesn't tell me where he's going. So I'm there with my flash gun, trying to find him, trying to get a shot. So it does come in handy when I'm working with Shikari. So I'm an energy person. So my environment affects me much more than other people. So tonight when I'm shooting, because I'm with the band, I have the privilege of shooting the whole set. So normally the first 3 songs, there'll be other photographers in the photo pit. I will try to be at front of house or behind the stage or somewhere where I'm not in their way or them being in my way. So another way of doing this is wearing your stage blacks, because if you are on stage and some photographers are in the pit, you want to do your best to not get in their shots just out of respect. Wearing black is something that most people should know in the industry, and if you don't, the reason for this is simply you just don't want to be seen. Another important thing to do is if you're working with a band during sound check, plan your routes. One thing that I've learned, especially with smaller shows, is there's not a lot of restricted access, meaning you do have to go through the crowd. You will have to ask people to move while you're carrying these camera equipments and people are carrying beers. So you do have to be careful and respectful in that way. But if you can map out routes from the balcony to the pit, to front of house, to the pit, it's going to make your life easier than trying to panic and do it last minute. I've definitely been at shows where I haven't done this and it's been an arena show and I've gone through one door and it's locked and I'm stuck and I'm like losing time, and time is really precious when you're shooting a live gig. Things just happen, and if you've missed it, you've missed it. So when I'm in the photo pit, it's kind of hard to navigate because again, the first 3 songs you're with other people. You want to be respectful and there is some gig etiquette. You don't want to be right at the front of a stage with your camera holding it up. Some people do that. You don't want to wear a backpack. You want to be very discreet, dodging and diving and being aware of who's there. So normally what I do at Shikari shows is I always have one eye up front, and then I quickly look and see if anyone's crowd surfing, if security are there, or what's happening. I do try to use two cameras. So if, for one example, I want to get the vocalist singing and then I want to get a crowd surfer, I can maybe get two in the one shot. I think it is a bit hard because some pits are so tiny. When we played a show in Bristol, I could barely move between the barrier, myself, the stage, and the security guards. I kept bumping into them so much that I was like, I'm just going to shoot from front of house or the balcony because this is not worth it. It really depends on the venue, but you just want to make sure that you're very comfortable, but also very alert. So being aware, making sure that you're not in people's way and letting people do their job is also very important. So when I'm shooting gigs, I look for detail. And I love when people have like rings and tattoos and their nails done and really interesting jewelry and just fashion in general. That's just my eye. So I tend to draw myself towards that, and I always try to get close-ups. It's really funny because artists admire this. They've put the effort in to look good and to get their, hair done. So if you can get these details, they're also shots that people tend not to do. I also love close-ups of expressions in the face. So cropping in, I really do love getting these shots and then in post-production making them even more interesting. I am a fan of wide angles just because you can get so much happening in one shot. Again, with Shikari, they're just so animated that there's so much you're getting. And, Rao kind of dances around and you get all these weird angles and these cool effects. So I'm a big fan of wide shots. So there's always shots that I really want to get, not just to please the fans, but to please the band as well. A great shot is when a crowd surfer comes all the way to the front, is reaching their hand out, trying to interact with Rao, and he's also interacting too. This shot I always want to get towards the end of the pit and get a very wide shot using my 8mm lens. This is really great because it shows the interaction of how energetic the band are, but also how receptive the fans are to the music. Another cool shot is with Rob, the drummer, when he kind of stands up and puts his drumsticks in the air and I go behind him on the riser and get a shot pointing down. This shot is really cool because it showcases the vastity of the venue, how energetic the fans are and how the lighting really hits everybody in the room and you can kind of see a better picture. Another shot that I'm going to try and get, and it really depends where Rao is, but he'll mysteriously disappear and then appear somewhere random like the balcony or front of house. So I think shots like this, I'm just going to be very aware and watch him very closely and push my way. If I have to get into the pit, I am ready. I've got my harness. I'm there to get the shots. So a big challenge today is going to maneuver through the crowd to get to front of house. Unfortunately, the sound desk is right up against a wall, which doesn't give me a lot of space to move. I did have some issues maneuvering through a sold out packed show before, and it wasn't the best. I had to protect my little camera babies, hold them up in the air. It doesn't help being short because even me holding it up in the air, people are way taller than that. So people don't see what you're doing. So straight after the gig, I love to rush to my laptop, get the photos onto my hard drive and then import them onto Lightroom. So what I normally do is I use the kind of red coloring key to select the photos I like. And I normally select between 30 to 100 because sometimes I can't choose. Then I go back and edit the photos. I normally have a preset that I can whack on, adjust a few things. And then from that, I will narrow it down to about 60 photos. From them 60 photos, I will choose about 3 or 4 and be like, how can I elevate them? So these standout photos, I want to make better. So I either go into Photoshop and do some double exposure layering or use some of my apps to add some more filters, some stars, some dust, some grain, and make it just very magical and Isha-like. Or how do you get the clients? That's what everybody wants to know. For me, it's social media. It's free, everybody can use it. Set up an Instagram, a Twitter, show off your personality. I think in 2023, it's a lot different than when I started out in 2017. A lot of it was self-promotion and continuously searching on Twitter for keywords like photographers wanted, photographers in London. Every day I would wake up and do this first thing. It was such a hassle, but I started off getting loads of jobs through that, just literally searching for people who wanted a photographer. I think in this day and age, it's all about personality. I've managed to actually create a brand for myself, and photographers are brands now. Just because you're good at taking photos doesn't mean someone's going to hire you. So my brand is very much about somebody who tells the truth about the industry. I speak about my experiences, obviously, without calling out people. I kind of give people advice and guidance because growing up, I never had that. I never was able to reach out to people and get some answers that I wanted. I learned everything off YouTube. I'm self-taught in everything I do. I observe people, I watch through friends that, I used to admire, but now we're kind of close friends. It's really cool. And I learn through social media. So my advice, if you want to really get yourself out there and attract clients, build a good social media profile, but also presence. You do have to post and you do have to show a bit of yourself because especially being on a tour, people want to know who you are. They're not gonna just be with you 24/7 if you're someone who's very quiet in the corner and doesn't really talk much. You do have to give a lot of who you are as well as your work. So generally speaking, clients want something different than what creatives want. It's just the way that our brains are wired. Clients love to show a packed out room with hands in the air, a clear shot of the band, relatively the same colors as to what's been shown, things that are true to life. What I want is the opposite. I want people to feel like they're immersed in a completely different world where it's just the music and them. I love doing these wacky cool edits. And some clients actually do like that and hire me for that. It is a bit rare because creativity is subjective. Art is so different. People see so many different things in photos. And I do know that typically speaking, clean shot photos do work. So I will always make sure I take my filters off, take all of that, get them shots, but then do some creative stuff for me. So how do you kind of liaise with these people? It's again different depending on who you're working for. So when it comes to press and publications, your editor would normally deal with this, with the emails, with applying for passes, and will give you all the information you need. So it's pretty easy breezy. You send them the photos and they send it to the PR company. When you're working with a band, you do have to be a little bit more persistent. You have to be in charge of when are you meeting them at the venue? What's the mode of transport? What do you need to bring? All these questions. If you haven't shot at a venue before, it's always good to have a Google and see what the venue looks like, just so you can bring the right lenses. On the last Shikari tour I did, I brought a 70-200, which was way, way, way too big for the venues, but it made for some really interesting photos, some really extreme close-ups. And then when you're shooting the actual show, you definitely should liaise with the artist if you're working with them. A lot of bands will have pyro, will have confetti, will have fireworks, will have so many moments that they want captured. When I was working with Shikari on their last tour, it was insane. They had 3 confetti drops. So they needed to tell me when this was going to happen so I could be at different points. Because there was 3, I could stay in the pit for 1, I could go to front of house for another, and then go behind the stage for the 3rd. This gave me the option of what confetti photo looked the best. Again, with pyro, you don't want to be hit in the head with that, so you do have to be careful when you're in the pit. With Shikari shows, they are hectic. There are crowd surfers everywhere. So not only are you watching the band, you're watching your back. You constantly have to be looking around, making sure that security can get these people to safety. You're not getting injured, but you're still getting your shots. With the live music industry, there's some restrictions, some more than others. I think it depends on what you're being hired for and who you're being hired by. Normally when I get hired by label and management never talk. So there's a big divide. With label, they kind of want things clean cut and things for social media. With management and the band, it's more personal and intimate. So trying to figure out what you're doing and the restrictions around this is quite tricky to navigate. My best advice is talk to security because I've had so many occasions at venues while I'm shooting with my AAA pass that security have stopped me, not allowed me to do my job because they simply don't believe that the pass is real. So I make an effort to try, and when I arrive at a venue, talk to security, show them my face, let them know who I am, ask for their name, like a decent human being would. So then you don't get into these issues later on in the show. In terms of restriction, there has been some artists that don't want to be creative as I want to be, and you can sometimes feel like you're just being hired to be a camera operator. When these instances happen, you do have to remember before you accept the job if you're doing it for money or if you're doing it for love. I've definitely been on tours where all I've done is shot the live show and that is it. 2 hours of the whole day for a whole month traveling. It can be a bit draining and jarring. You have to create your own creativity. So sometimes I will talk to the crew and be like, do you want some crew photos? Let's do some fun stuff. Let's do some merch pics. I think when you're on a tour, you don't realize that it's not just the band that you're trying to get to know and get pictures of, but it's the whole crew. And honestly, without the crew, there is no show. I think my biggest lesson that I've learned is talk to every single person in the room. Everyone who is at a gig, at a concert, is there for a reason. So when you're arriving with the band early, you know, talk to the security, talk to the promoter, talk to the other photographers, just talk to anybody because they may help you out later down the line. I think we can always be very shy and concerned about how we come across, but simply just introducing yourself, shaking your hand out, hey, my name's Isha Shah, I'm gonna be photographing tonight, can also make them feel at ease with you. Sometimes you kind of arrive at gigs and you don't really know people and it can be a bit scary, but the more you talk to people, the more you build a sense of community and trust, and that trust can correlate in your photos. Some of the biggest mistakes I've learned is not shooting my shot. I think sometimes we can have imposter syndrome and feel a bit like I'm not good enough to do a certain thing and not email. There's been so many chances where this has got to me and I haven't done it. But then there's been on the flip side where I've emailed artists that I love, gotten no reply at all. 4 years later, they've hit me up and I've managed to work with them. So I'm a big believer in don't be your own saboteur and definitely message people. I even sent an email to Drake. He said no, but I still sent that email and his PR reached out and was like, we're at capacity. So to me, a no just means not now. Another mistake is always back up your files. I cannot tell you, this happened on tour where I shot the sound check, shot the meet and greet, and then the gig was happening, didn't upload the photos, wiped out my SD cards, and was definitely responsible to some angry fans asking me where are the group shots. I had to severely apologize as it was my fault and take accountability that I simply forgot and didn't back up my files. A lot of photographers don't do this. They wipe out SD cards. That's why always have at least 4 on hand and always have an external hard drive. So you're backing up to your hard drive and your laptop. So when it comes to lighting, your camera settings and your equipment is so important. That is why I try to always have a prime lens on hand. When you're working with a band, it's really easy to ask them and ask the lighting tech, what's gonna happen when? So even sometimes I'm brave enough to go to the front of the house and speak to these lighting techs when I'm even there for press and be like, what vibe are you going for? Sometimes they're really open and will ask me what I would want, and sometimes they'll just tell me. With that, you kind of have to adapt. So having a prime lens allows you to get the low light situations when it's very heavily blue and dark and there's no front lights on the artist. When it's all backlit, you definitely want to have a low aperture. So a 1.2 to a 1.8 is great. When it's heavily front lit, you can go to like 5.6 in the higher aperture ranges because there's so much light happening. So when I shoot at the O2, I can definitely afford to go up to 5.6 in aperture, get a higher shutter speed and a lower ISO and capture some shots. But venues like today, I definitely know 2.8 is a great setting and even 1.4 will benefit that. So what I would say to my younger self is the quote that I love to use in any interview I do is shoot your shot, but don't be a beg. I think growing up, I was very scared to just shoot my shot because I always thought I'd come across like a beg. But there's a way to do it professionally. And I feel like building an actual relationship with artists is important. So shooting your shot and being like, I want to work with you, but why? You know, everyone was a fan of the artist they work for. So maybe even saying that in an email and being like, I've loved you for this many years. I love your music. I love how you encapsulate X, Y, and Z. And I feel like my work can elevate what you already do. So I think being more bold and brave and confident in yourself is very important. And also you have to remind yourself that you are the best at what you do in this whole industry. So having the confidence is key. And I want to remind everybody that if you go through life with that mindset, you'll fake it till you'll make it, but then you'll actually make it and you won't have to fake it anymore. So my top 3 tips are going to be, first of all, to network. Network with everybody. Like I said, everybody in the room is just as important as you are. So make sure you have a conversation at least with one person at every show. The second tip is to try to learn to be very fast with your edits. So people think that, oh my God, you're so fast, that's so cool. But it's a skill. Being able to edit photos like that, upload them to the band compose, is a skill you have to learn, and you shouldn't compromise the quality over the quantity. My last point is to be creative. And I think you need to really understand, what is your brand? What is your style? What are your colors? What do you like to do? And stick with that. Not everybody is gonna like that, and that's fine, because art is subjective. It's not for everybody. But if you are very confident in your conviction and your morals of what you stand for and what you want to put out in the world, then nobody can say that it's not good. So Shikari are on now. We are gonna head to the stage and take some photos. So that was actually the sweatiest show I've ever done, especially with Shikari. The last run, this knocked it out of the park. I was doing full-on cardio workout, no gym for the week, cardio done. I really enjoyed it. I love the unpredictability of it. There was a lot of the times where I thought being at the balcony I'd get the best shot, but then I realized being there, no, I had to go in front of house. Then I had to go to the pit. And, you know, people were very respectful. So I think it was a really good crowd to shoot in. Running through about 10 times. People knew, they saw me, they moved out of the way. Covered in sweat, as you can tell. My hair's a mess, but that proves that it was a really good gig. I think a big challenge was just not knowing the angles and where Rao would be and getting the best shot. So when he was on the balcony, I thought being on the balcony would work. It didn't. I had to be in the crowd, went into the crowd, couldn't go deep enough. So there was a lot of times where I wasn't happy with my angling, especially on the balcony, not being able to get right to the front due to fans. You know, they've paid to be there. I don't really want to get in their way. So it was a lot of maneuvering, a lot of running up and down. It definitely put my health to the test, and I can say I'm definitely still fit. So my favorite shots tonight were definitely from just taking risks. It's really hard to know when to be on stage and when not to. So I got on the drum riser and Rob saw me and like kind of tilted his face, and I got some really cool fisheye shots. I'm really happy with the shot when Rao picked up the light and it's all dark, but you can just see the light in him. I think I'm really proud of like the pit shots and when he kind of dances around and I just follow him. I definitely got some fan interaction when crowd surfers were coming and pointing at him. So yeah, I'm really pleased with the shots that I've got. In post-production, I'm definitely going to edit some of these a bit more. There were some shots with the lasers that I felt could be mirrored and have a kind of like double exposure effect and make it very trippy, very fun. I think I'm going to have a play around with layering. Since there wasn't confetti, I want to bring that element to these photos. So I might layer some close-up shots with some crowd shots, some hands in the air, some of the Shikari signs, which I'm trying to do, but I'm really bad at it. So yeah, I'm going to have a play around in post-production, do some mirroring and some double exposures. So yeah, now it's time to, you know, go home, sleep, wash the sweat off me. I just want to say a big thank you to the venue, to Shikari for allowing me to do this. Thank you to Wex and Canon for, you know, being a part of this video, making these happen. I hope you learned something from this video, and I hope you can share this video and obviously help each other learn and grow. We're all here together. And yeah, thank you guys. I've been Isha Shah Photography. Gonna leave you off with a quote: shoot your shot, but don't be a beg. Bye.